Good morning, or good evening to you, actually. Namo Amida Butsu.
Namo Amida Butsu. Good to see you. How are you?
I am well. It's a good, had a nice, productive but relaxing morning.
That's always nice.
I decided to listen to a couple of videos about one about the Nishi Hongwanji temple, because I wanted to kind of see, like, it was a tour that I think it was Reverend Sakia.
I think I know the video.
2011 or something. It's an old video. Some university students, because I kind of wanted to see the things we talked about in the one session where where you were doing the liturgy, and you were telling me where. So I wanted to kind of see some of that, and then I watched the video on the difference between Nishi Hongwanji and Higashi Hongwanji, and that turned out to be, there was much more difference historically going back than I had kind of thought it was. I thought it was all from the restoration, Meiji restoration, but there was stuff going back even further, and I was like, oh, okay, so it's much more, even more complicated.
The history actually of the the Hongwanji was very, very powerful at the time, and the Tokugawa shogun basically divided it into two temples and then gave one to Kenyo Shonin's brother. And then that was the beginning of the East and West Hongwanji. So
the actual
the history goes back.
But there was more beyond. There was other things that tied into that, to the differences before that. But I didn't realize. But anyway, So I mean, it was just one
fascinating history.
Yeah, it is. It is. So shall we get to it then?
Well, I'm here to listen, and so you did send me your question or issue.
Yes. So shall I read that? Just
yes, please do.
Clear kind of where was I here? Of course, there we go. So the first thing I said is, basically I was saying that it all boils down to if I'm ever going to have faith or have a sense of joy about listening, it seems like all I get from it all sometimes is frustration. And all I think of others who have faith is, when I think of others who have faith, I think sort of jealously, and we talked about this before, oh, good for you, said vindictively and sarcastically, when I'll hear them talking about the joy of faith. And honestly, sometimes I think it's hopeless beyond hopeless that I'm ever gonna have faith, after 15 years and forth. And then I went further and explained it further that it just seems to me that there are those who are karmically constituted in such a way as to make them receptive and capable of the faith mindset, neurologically, behavioral, culturally, etc. And there are others who just are not. I fear that sadly my karmic causes and conditions for this current human rebirth, provisional existence, are just not suitable to the openness, trust, and receptivity required for being able to accept the gift of Shinjin. I fear I must have incalculable more rebirths before I have the necessary good causes from the past to fully be open to truly hearing Amida's call and receiving Shinjin. It seems to me that this is what sometimes it seems like this to me. This is what I should work on accepting and act accordingly in whatever way is indicated by my karmic causes, given the evidence and circumstances, something along the line. I can't. I think I had a typo there, and I can't remember how I meant to word it. But anyway, what I was reading. But that's That's a big one.
Yeah.
I've had that one a long
Yeah,
time.
it is a big one. And I think it's a recurring, it seems to be a recurring issue that kind of is, you know, we've talked about it, I think even during our first meeting, possibly. We addressed it a little bit, but, you know, I think it's definitely maybe for you, like a bigger issue that, you know, just simply, you know, you talk about it and here are some things that could be a solution, right? But then the doubt, you know, comes back kind of. It's not like it just, it doesn't just go away after one conversation, right?
Definitely not. Very persistent. Very persistent. And it kind of is linked up with that other, what I was talking about last time with the, you know, when I go into that skeptical, cynical mindset, you know, question everything, and that
doubt everything.
The two kind of go to hand in hand. You know, but anyway.
Well, you know,
that's that.
Yeah, I think the kind of the core of this issue is, you know, the question that there's something on my side, right? So we've got my side, we have Amida's side, right?
Yeah.
There's it's a two, you know, a two-way, because that's what Shinran talks about, you know, echo, or the transferring. It's translated different ways in English, like the collected works of Shinran has directing of virtue.
Yeah.
And then I believe the late Reverend Hisao Inagaki translates it as transference of merit, which is a more kind of typical translation, kind of in line with Orthodox Mahayana teaching, right? Is this concept that, you know, at the basic level, that we can perform practices and then we can transfer that merit for the benefit of other beings, right? And even at the end of every like sutra that's chanted in, I think, almost any tradition, not just Jodo Shinshu, but other, you know, Zen, they do this as well. But the, you know, may the merit or may the virtue of this service be given equally to all beings, and may we all share in that merit, and may we all equally attain birth in the Pure Land. And so the concept of echo is, you know, for Shinran, it's not us transferring the merit of our practice. It's Amida transferring the merit of his practice as Dharmakara Bodhisattva. So this is a radical shift, a radical, you know, interpretation of Pure Land Buddhism, right? And it's only really found in Shinran's thought. So, you know, from Amida's side, the virtue of that practice is, which is contained in his name, you know, Namo Amida Butsu. And that is being directed to us from Amida's side, right? So, well, I said all that to say that it's a two-way. There are two sides to this story, right? it's not just me. There's Amida's side as well. So there's a problem arises when you start to, you know, think along the lines of, well, you know, I lack something, or I don't have the karmic conditions, or your mind starts to create all of these reasons why you couldn't possibly be born in the Pure Land, or couldn't, get receive Shinjin or something like that, right? For some people it manifests as, I'm not good enough, I don't have enough, I haven't done enough good deeds in the past, or I'm too, my personality is in a certain way, or I was born in the wrong era. The list goes on and on and on, right? But that is all my mind, which is, we call it jiriki, or self-power. So all of those doubts that are creating obstacles, right, is all, it's a problem on my side, right? Because I'm creating these reasons why I can't be, I can't possibly be saved. And Shinron refers to this as hakarai, which means calculations. So the calculating mind that's constantly thinking, well, we think, what have I got to do to be born in the Pure Land? That's a calculation, right? What do I have to do? What do I have to do to receive Shinjin? That again becomes a calculation. Now, of course, we've discussed, the way to Shinjin, the path to Shinjin, the process. It's like the image we had last session of the water boring a hole in the rock. It doesn't happen overnight. It's a process, right? Which is why Rinyo Shonin says, clear
Very
the channels
slow, excruciating slow process. Anyway,
yeah.
So,
well, and that's why Rinyo Shonin says, we need to clear the channels of faith and let Amida's water, flow, so that process can happen. So, yeah, my point is that we have all of these calculations, but Shinron says that the name of Amida actually sweeps away doubts. And what he means by that is, the true, hearing of the name that arises is something that makes all of those calculations kind of disappear, because it's coming from Amida's side. And I was actually listening to a Dharma talk by Abe Sensei, who is a priest in Japan. And he was talking about the larger sutra, and he pointed out that the teaching of the larger sutra, I'm translating what he said as best as I can, is not a teaching of you have to do this and this and this to be born in the Pure Land. It's even in the primal vow, where we have, saying my name, those who say my name, who have a sincere faith and who wish to be born. Now, this is a big topic, and we can discuss this, at some point, but those things, they're not conditions. They're not things that we fulfill in order to be born. It's not like a, you do your side of the bargain and Amida does his kind of, it's not a deal that Amida is making, right?
right.
Actually, you could contrast this kind of with the idea of like a covenant in Judeo-Christian religion, where, God makes his end of the bargain, but then, the Israelites or whoever it is, right, have to kind of keep up their end of the bargain. for the contract to work. It's like a contract, right? But that's not what the vow is in Jodo Shinshu. The vow is Amida's promise, and the vow is fulfilled. And what we have to do on our side is simply the receiving, accepting that with the Shinjin and so on. So there's a big difference there. But what Abe Sensei said is what did he say? He said there's no, well, the question people have is, why can't I be saved? I go to the Dharma meetings, I listen, I read, I chant, I'm soaking it in.
Why can't I be you?
Yeah. Yeah. And I still don't have this sense of being saved. So what's the problem? Well, it's not a problem on Amida's side, right? So we've discussed this in the past. Amida isn't picking and choosing who to give Shinjin to, right?
Yeah.
It's it's a problem on our side, which is calculation in Jiriki, self-power. So when our calculations are all, swept away, taken care of, then we become open to the working of other power, which is from Amida's side, working on us. And thoughts like, I don't have the karmic causes or conditions, or I'm not, my personality, and even like, I think you mentioned in your question, maybe I just don't have the ability to have that trusting, faith experience like some people do, right? But that's you. You're talking about your ability. Mm-hmm. You're talking about your capacity. And you're measuring that. You're calculating. You're saying, I do, I don't, I have it. How much do I have it? You're sort of, taking stock of yourself, but that in itself is, part of the problem. And Abe Sensei said that because the problem is not Amida's side, it's our self-power. That's why, for example, Shinran Shonin says, throw away, people should throw away the self-power. What does it say? Jiriki no kokoro o furistete, which means throw away the mind of self-power. That's in the Ryogamon as well, which is the sort of the creed that Rinyo Shonin wrote for Jodo Shinshu. That's the first line, is throwing away the mind of self-power, which is the mind of
you see the mind of self-power on the road, throw it away.
Exactly.
the Zen equivalent of,
yeah.
Not really, but yeah. I was just borrowing from the Zen saying of if you meet it's not the same thing. It's definitely not the same thing at all, is what they're saying. But it's
the same.
If you meet the concept. But yeah, I was just borrowing the phrase, phrase.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah, and that's exactly right. So how do we throw away our self-power? That becomes the conundrum. How do I throw away self-power? Can I use my self-power to throw away my self-power?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Well,
and the more you try,
let it go. With let it go, just drop it. Just let go of the brick. Let it go.
Yeah.
But anyway, sorry. Go ahead, continue.
No, that's great. So, well, I've been talking for a while now. What do you have
Well,
any thoughts?
yeah. So part of when I think of this, I think of, I don't see, I'm not looking at the problem as on Amida's side, like somehow there's something Amida's waiting for, it's
Right.
already being transmitted. Okay. It's already out there. It's already being given. It's already, there's not anything, that's already done. It's already done on Amida's part. But have I made my own mind, whether in this life or in past, lifetimes, to whatever extent, have I made myself incapable? Do you see what I'm saying? Not saying that there's by either the mental actions, speech actions, or physical actions, have I made myself, for this lifetime anyway, incapable of that? Have I done that mindset to myself, is what I'm saying. Have I, because there was a point.
Well,
Okay,
we're always doing it
to the
to
surface
ourselves.
now. There's some more that relates to that secular mind, that secular, skeptical, cynical, philosophically pessimistic mindset that arises. That there was a point where I went full atheist. Okay, full, and there was a time where I was, I was like full agnostic, and then full atheist, and full, and I'd go back, and during those times, I really went fully into that, mindset. And did talk to, talk to others about it. And just so my stance toward any kind of religion or spiritual belief was, it's made up, basically. The only exception I made was Buddhism, as far as the mind states and things. Like there's something that hasn't been plumbed, and maybe never will be plumbed by science or by us being able to do it. Those kinds of things, about consciousness, and how consciousness is tied into reality, and like all of that was true. I say, like, so my only exception was Buddhism, the teachings about reality and self, the delusion of self, and all of those things. That was the only exception I made. But when it came to things, any supernatural aspects of it, in a way, I kind of, just lumped those with every other kind of religion. But still, I left the door open for Buddhism because of the consciousness aspect of things. And even during this mindset, because I was like, it is onto the truth about consciousness and the fabric of reality, and how that all fits together, and how it's kind of the same thing, consciousness and reality. And so that does kind of open the door for all kinds of other worlds and other states of existence, and other mind states that would create other types of realities, and so I never completely, so Buddhism was my only exception to all of that. But still, I wonder sometimes, does that constitute me talking about it, whether it's and lumping aspects of Buddhism together with other religions in that sense, and just with myself and talking about it with others, does that constitute somehow slander of the Dharma? Do you see what I mean?
No, I don't think so.
Or or some kind of mind that I create, and I didn't stay in it. I couldn't sustain that. I could not. I go back. I go in and out of that atheistic / agnostic state, and I could never really sustain it, for very long time. And I would come out of it and return to kind of, what I mean, other things. But did I by those time periods, by going into that, did I somehow make myself incapable of being receptive? Do you see what I mean? Somehow.
Yes.
Just for this lifetime, karmically speaking, that's what I mean.
Well,
and did I do that in other lifetimes? A similar thing that makes me, and this is the problem's on my part. The problem I'm talking about is me making myself that way. So do you know how they say, the only, the exceptions, the 5 deeds, and there's an explanation about how, well, actually you still can, Amida, you know what I mean? You can still, there's certain things of those that Amida will still can save you. Do you know what I mean? Even
yeah, definitely. No, that's
out that. Except there's really strong ones about the slander of the Dharma thing. And I think of it like, or any of those actions that somebody could do. Okay, whether it's, the five grave offenses.
Yeah.
If you've done those, you make yourself incapable of faith. It's not like Amida goes, oh, well, you've done those, so and you're not going to you make yourself.
Right.
It's not like those actions. We go into a mind state by those actions. We go into a mind state that makes us incapable of being unreceptive. And that's kind of how I sort of read.
Yeah, I think you're totally right. It's not.
I make myself. So in this case, of those 5 grave offenses, the only one I'm worried about, because I've not definitely done the other 4, but the only one I'm worried about is the slander of the Dharma one. That somehow, even within myself, somehow did I, by going so far into that atheistic, agnostic, do you know what I mean, mind state, did I somehow, even if I didn't slam the Dharma, but did I somehow make myself, or if I did I make myself, take myself into that unreceptive state?
Yeah.
Saying, and is that something that can be overcome? Again, the problem's on my side. The problem's on Amida side. Yes, Amida could, but do you see what I mean? Like,
yes,
I've made myself that. So
I do. So I have a few thoughts. Well, the basic. Let me just make clear too,
I'm not in that mind state. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah.
But
well, otherwise you wouldn't be here, right?
It's still in there. It's still in that. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's still very interwoven into my psyche, into my mind. Okay, so there's that. So there's that part of it. Now, another part of this is trust in anything. I've touched on that in the last session about question. I just question everything. I don't trust anything. And there's various reasons for that. Going way back in my life, but I don't trust people very much. And I don't, and so anything that comes from human beings, I don't trust very much. Do you know what I mean? And while, yes, the Buddha Dharma comes from, the ultimate Buddha, Buddha nature. It comes from, the Dharmakaya. It comes from the, in the ultimate truth, the ultimate reality. Human beings are the ones talking about it and who you learn it from.
Yes.
Okay.
That is true.
And so that's a barrier for me. That's become a barrier. I'm very distrusting of people. I'm very, and a lot of times I just don't like them. I'll be honest with you. I just really don't much like humans.
Well, you know,
and I don't much trust them. And that gets reflected back on myself too. I don't much like or trust myself. Do you know what I mean? In a sense. Do you know what I mean? So it's anyway, so that's another aspect of this, of the difficulties with receptivity, is that first part I said, and then there's this other,
the trust
distrust, the whole idea of, you know, and it's a big entrusting, you know, it's a big leap to entrust in the way that, and I know that comes from, you know, the ability to do that ultimately has to come from Amida, really, doesn't it? But me being open to entrusting or trusting, it's a bear. These two together, combined with the mind state I told you about last time, basically we'll call it the skeptical, cynical, philosophical pessimist. You know, these three together, for receptivity, it doesn't bode well. You know what I mean?
And I totally see where you're coming from, and it's a great question. I have a few thoughts. Well, one is what you said about, have I made myself this way, right? So, and it's, again, you know, in Buddhism, we don't have the concept of like sinning against, you know, an almighty divinity or something like that, that you then get punished for. But rather, you know, even going back to like the Dharma Pada, I think it says, you know, we make kind of our experience, or who we are, is sort of made through our actions, the actions we take, the thoughts we think. And action in Buddhism, karma, right, means the three actions of body, mind, and speech. So it's everything we, you know, do, basically, including in our heads. So but the thing is we are self-making this. That's what samsara is we're stuck in this cycle, this circle of the kleshas, you know, anger and lust and greed and craving, and the craving never ceases. You know, it just goes on and on and on, and the more we get, the more we want, you know.
Exactly.
So it is our self-made prison, as it were, right? So we can't blame, you know, the gods for it, you know. We can't shake our fist at heaven and say, why did you put me on this miserable, godforsaken planet, you know? We have to kind of, you know, there's a sort of taking of responsibility in Buddhist thought, right? Going back to the very earliest sutras and so on. But this problem of this self-created, you know, problem that we're in is precisely the problem, because it leads to suffering. It's the very illness that the Buddha's teaching is for, right? So it's intended for us who are creating self-created, self-harming, other harming, you know, we harm ourselves, we harm other people, right? We're stuck in this situation, right? So from the very beginning, the Buddha's whole teaching, even beyond Jodo Shinshu, you know, although in Jodo Shinshu, of course, we say that the reason Shakyamuni, you know, came to teach the Dharma was ultimately to teach the primal vow. But whatever school of Buddhism you have, it's all, the purpose is the same, right? The goal is the same, which is the ending of suffering, the awakening through which suffering is ended, right? So yes, it's self-made, but it's not, it can't not be overcome, is what I would say. And Shinran, particularly with the slander of the Dharma, because that's a very important misconception some people have, is that well, Shantao or Zendo Daishi, the Chinese master who was Honen's, basic teacher, Honen referred to Shantao as his teacher, right?
He's very key in both Chinese and Japanese Pure Land schools. He's very key, major figure. Yeah. Anyway.
Right. Key figure, and he addresses this question in detail in his writing, and Shinran, discusses it, quotes from it in Kyogyo Shincho. And probably, to get into detail might take another, conversation, but briefly, these, the five evil, the five atrocious things that you never want to do, is basically the Buddha, it's not that people who do those things can't be, saved by, right? And in Jodo Shinshu, we have the concept of the evil person being the object of Amida's salvation. But the slander of the Dharma is kind of the point where Shandao says, this is definitely a problem. But then Shinran says very clearly, and I think he's quoting, that even those who slander the Dharma, if they turn about in their mind, in other words, if they change their mind, if they, you could say repent, but it's really, if they turn about at heart, if they have a change on that, then they will be, born in the Pure Land. No problem. It's, in other words, slander of the Dharma is not an obstacle to Amida's salvation. And being, that's very important, because it does seem, if you just read the larger sutra, it says, these people will be saved except for those who slander the Dharma. It says it right there. So but no.
That's always the only one I was really worried about.
Yeah, and it clearly says, even slanderers of the Dharma, I think this is Shinran's very words, if they turn about at heart, they are all equally born in the land.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. Have I had a complete turnabout at heart from that? Because there's this thing within me that while I give that exception to Buddhism, it's always got the exception to my lambasting of everything else in life with my skeptical, cynical, ruthless, question everything approach. Always Buddhism was like, okay, Buddhism was to the test, but there's always that, but does it? Is that little bit of, you know what I mean? And it's the same
doubt in the corner of your mind.
Yeah, so it's not just with Jodo Shinshu and the Amida Dharma. It goes, it's a deeper thing of, do I really believe that? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Full stop. Like, there's that little shadow. It's, so the doubt is not just about Amida. It goes back to the full on. Does this do I really give it an exception? Do I has it really met? Do I really believe it's met the test? In my deepest, darkest, inmost, being.
Yeah.
Consciously and subconsciously, or however you want to put it, do I really give it? Do I give it a pass? Did I and do I really give it a pass? So it goes, it's not just, the two are, for me, are tied together.
Yeah. Well, I will say
Because if I don't
that
give it, if I don't give it the pass that I think I do, then
that's a
that
problem.
is,
Yeah.
anyway.
Well,
So there's that question. It's not a definite. It's just there's that question in me. Do I
yeah.
give it? Do I?
Well, so I am in a similar way. I think I've mentioned this in the past. I too have a pretty skeptical mind when it comes to, in an analytical mind when it comes to religion and religious claims and so on. I tend to be on the skeptical side of the spectrum, right? So what would be an example? Like, well, in Japan, there's a lot of legends, there's a lot of like religious sort of mythology, like like Shinran Shonin, according to one legend, when he came to Eastern Japan, he planted his staff in the ground, and then it like took root and became a huge ginkgo tree, according to the legend.
Oh, this is a legend. This isn't anything in Buddhist sutras or anything. This is just a legend, a Japanese.
Right, it's a legend, but okay. There are similar things in even Buddhist literature, and so when I hear a legend like that, what happens in my mind, right? I think, first of all, that probably didn't happen historically. I mean, it may have happened historically, but it's a legend. It's probably a story that people sort of told about Shinran because he was an important figure for them, right, in that community. So that's the skeptical side of my mind. But then the other side of me says, that's a really cool story that sort of communicates how Shinran spread, the teaching of the Dharma in Eastern Japan. And I can really just appreciate that story, for what it is, without necessarily having to engage, I don't have to disbelieve it. I can just sort of, be cool with it. How to put it, Yeah. It's like, so, and there are things in Buddhist literature where it might be a little bit hard for modern people, living in this age of science to totally there's stuff that may be hard to kind of accept, but you don't necessarily have to. In my opinion, when you assert your judgment, you say, this is true, this is false, this happened, this didn't. That's you, right? You're projecting you're measuring things according to your scale,
my own deluded mind, with my own
right.
So deluded, ignorant, blind passioned mind. I'm calculating. Perceiving that anyway. So
you don't have to blindly just accept everything that you hear and read, right? I mean, that's not a recommended approach to religion generally. Otherwise, you're going to end up in trouble, But at the same time, you don't have to be I don't know how to put it. You can be cool with things.
Yeah.
Without
fully. Somehow this is true, but maybe not in the way that.
Yeah, not necessarily in a literal way or in a historical way, or
so
there's meanings, there's layers of truth and so and meaning and so on. It's
in tools of teaching, skillful means.
Right. And it's upaya, right? Or skillful means. So sometimes the Buddha tells stories, right?
Yeah. So part and there's part of me that when I'm really accepting,
Mm.
Dharma and really, you know,
In the groove.
all in. Yeah, all in, as it were, or almost all in. I can be, I think I mentioned this at a previous session where because it's all to do with consciousness, quote unquote, it's all to do with, so it's everything that places mind is in the, but at the same time, it's real. It's we manifest, actual, because of our karma, both individually and collectively, we manifest. These are real world, ignorant, thing, though it's from our ignorance and from our karma and things, it manifests in a real way. It manifests. So it's both consciousness and it's a play, in an actual realm that I'm in. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah.
So on that basis, I can just say, yeah, because that's what Buddhism teaches. And I've never been able to kind of rule out that level of the tying of the consciousness and reality together, because they are just completely interwoven, So it's very easy for me to actually accept, yes, somehow that happened. Like I look at the Lotus Sutra and all the stuff that occurs, and it says, yes, somehow, and in some realm of reality,
right, yeah, at some
somehow
level
that did happen, and it simultaneously, because the Buddha is the Buddha, he was using it to teach. So simultaneously it was happening, and it was a teaching device, and it was everything, what I mean? And it was occurring in consciousness, and it was a real happening.
Right.
Do you see what I mean? So like when I'm in that mind state, I can go with that. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, you can roll with it.
I'm there, and that means, Amida Buddha is a real Buddha, Pure Land is a real, realm, et cetera, the whole thing, Buddhist cosmology. Now I know, I know about, with Buddhist cosmology, there's definitely with some provisional, skill and means, there's of
right, yeah,
teaching about things that people at the time the Buddha was the time and the place of Buddha's teaching couldn't possibly understand about. But I, for myself, have look at it. I can see where it's pointing toward what actually is. Do you know what I mean?
Right, yeah.
I see that in the Buddha mind, he was seeing like the real reality of it, and he had to just say, well, okay, most people at the time, it was flat earth, wasn't it? It was at the time of his teaching, pretty much whatever land you went to, whatever culture you went to, wherever you were, it was pretty much, there was some other thing, some others are like, well, maybe not exactly flat, but there was something, what I mean? But generally speaking, most people, that's what it was to them, so he just used that and just said, okay, I'll explain that through that, that's kind of how I see
right, yeah,
what he did there. It's a skillful means at the time, but
exactly.
So I can see that and look at that and say, well, he probably did mean, and it's actually what we think we see, even now in our vaunted, modern age of, astronomy and quantum physics and everything else. What we think we see, he probably saw he can see, the Buddha sees it as it really is. But if there was a Buddha teaching today, that Buddha would have taught according to, you see what I mean? And said, well, here's how it's set up.
Well, and to go even further, I mean, what the Buddha does is he puts the timeless, truth, which is completely beyond words, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And he puts it into words so that he can teach us. And that, when the truth, which is, and Shinran talks about this too, when the truth is, put into words, that's what we call a sutra. A preaching, a sermon, whatever you want. It's the Buddha giving this speech on the Dharma in words. So, there's that level, there's that linguistic aspect where we can accept the text as it is. We don't have to impose our judgment necessarily on the text. We can, and that's actually how, in my opinion, you should be reading a sutra, is just letting it speak to you and not, pushing your viewpoints onto it. But that doesn't mean that we have to just uncritically, accept everything in a literal sense, right? So, this goes into a whole nother conversation about how scriptural texts are read in a religious context. And it's not simple, like atheists like to pretend like people who are religious just sort of, read their text and just believe in it as a literal thing, and isn't that silly? Yeah. But there's a lot more to it than that. There's interpretation. There's Shinran reads Buddhist texts sometimes in very radical and different ways, and brings in a whole new world of interpretation to the text. So but again, essentially a sutra, the teaching, is putting the wordless into words so that we, who are beings who use language to understand ourselves and the world, can understand the truth. So it's a provisional means, right? It's the Buddha's skill in means.
One of the things emphasized in the Lotus Sutra, where he says, this is a teaching for Buddhas. You can't, that's why they had to ask him like 3 times, please give us the teaching. He's like, no, you'll be confused. You can't this because you will, because it's the Buddha. This right. Be transmitting the Buddha mind. Like you can't understand it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
He finally did give that, but that's one of the things emphasized, like, for the first half of the whole sutra is talking about all the provisional, teachings and all the, the skill and means, of, various periods of the teaching or whatever. But anyway, like we can't understand it any other way than how we're going to understand it.
Right. And even in the larger sutra,
unfortunately, until we're Buddhists, we'll understand it when we're Buddha. That's when in fact, it won't be even understanding. It'll just be that's what we are. Like we just we will just know. We won't. Yeah. But do you see what I mean? So.
Well, can I just add one more thing?
Yeah.
Just very quickly. In the larger sutra, Shakyamuni describes, the Pure Land and all of this very, ornate and beautiful language. And then at the end, after doing all that, he says, but it really is completely beyond language, and no words that I could possibly use can even describe it.
It's basically saying the same thing than what I was just saying about the Lotus Sutra conveys. There's no end. Probably countless other sutras say the same thing, in their own.
I think Mahayana thought, puts a lot of emphasis on the inconceivable aspects of the Dharma, whereas Hinayana or Theravada is a lot more like down to earth, maybe you could say. Well, I'm sorry, what were you going to?
It's the early teachings, that.
Right.
That's how they were. That's on purpose. I think the Buddha.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to give you the whole thing. Here you go. here's the whole thing. And it was like, okay, let me break this down for you now.
Let's start with
Noble truths. Okay. Eightfold path. We're gonna let's get this, let's bring it down to,
right.
down to earth. So yeah. So that's on purpose. I think he did it that way, the early teaching. Were down that, had to be to start with, to lay
and the Keigon Kyo, or the Avatam Saka Sutra, is, according to the classification or the category of sutras in Tendai, is, I think, basically the unfiltered, like the content of what Shakyamuni's original experience of enlightenment is, right?
Yeah, that's what I mean. And that was his first sutra that he delivered. Can you imagine humans hearing that for the first? Yeah, that's what I mean. Like, that's what I mean.
Yeah,
like,
and nobody got it except for Bodhisattva. Yeah.
Anyway, yeah.
And actually, Shinran, uses the Avatam Saka Sutra a bit. He quotes from it, and in fact, this is a topic, a story for another time. But he equates the Pure Land with the Lotus Store world in the Avatam Saka Sutra, which is pretty crucial, because that is why for Shinran, birth in the Pure Land equals the attainment of enlightenment. It's the same, basically birth in the Pure Land is nirvana. So Shinran actually makes a connection there. But I think, did you have something you wanted to?
Yeah, so just trying to bring it back. So when I'm in that mindset, and even now going in, when I talk about it, I get, I get excited about it. I get, you know what I mean? Get very, into it. And I can just, it feels, I can see, like in my own limited, karmically limited way, yes, I can see this, but then there's those times where, okay, I'll hear someone giving a teaching, transmitting the teaching, or I'll read something and it'll hit me.
Do I really believe this?
That's true. Yeah, exactly. Or I'll hear somebody talk about what Shinjin is like, or what they, and I'll be like, as if that's not like a major chasm for me to cross.
Well, and it's a problem, right? Because
it'll suddenly hit me, like, can I really,
Well, and the question is can you? I mean, we know there were people, they supposedly had Shinjin, and they talked a lot about it. They wrote an awful lot. They talked and talked about it.
Yeah.
And what happened?
Yeah. And I was one of them for a year. I did, I thought I did. I thought I did, as we've talked about. But so that's another problem too, because I've done that before for shorter periods, and now I've done it for a longer, and it's made me even more distrusting of myself when it comes to the idea of faith, the idea of being receptive of faith, being receptive of Shinjin, being receptive of being trusting. Anyway, sorry, go ahead.
Well, no. I mean, we're having a conversation, so I'm just listening to what you're saying, and trying to get where you're coming from. And Shinran actually, this is something we should talk about at some point. But I'll try to find the text later. But basically, he quotes a text that says, in the time we live in, people should rely on the Dharma and not rely on the people who teach it. Shinran says that.
Now. Yeah, I remember.
Do you remember that?
I remember that. Somebody, I remember going, oh, yeah, that made it. I'd forgotten about that. That's really good to be reminded of.
I think so.
Forgot about that. Yeah. That's very important. Yeah.
And another thing, I know we are getting up on the end of our time, but I did want to
I figured we just get to a point where I would get this fully on the table kind of thing, and then we'd.
Yeah, because it's big. It's a huge. I mean,
This is gonna
we
probably
can't
be
address
going
it
on
in
for a
one.
while.
Right.
So good. You're gonna say
Well, I
one more.
just wanted to say one more thing, which was, what was it? Well, there's a tradition in Jodo Shinshu called the Myokoni, which means a wondrous, excellent person. And it comes from the sutra where the Buddha says, those who follow this teaching are like lotus flowers, and they're wondrous, excellent people. And Myokonin, there's a few famous like Myokonin, like Ginza and Okaru, but basically they're people who were known for having a very devoted Shinshu faith, basically. Like they were kind of almost regarded as like sort of sages, by and they were always like really, uneducated, just humble nobodies. But they came to be known for their extremely, their devotion to Jodo Shinshu. And of course that's great and that's wonderful. And to the extent that stories, about Myokonin are like that you find them helpful and beneficial, I think it's good to, it's part of our tradition, right? But you run into a problem when you start comparing yourself to these people and saying, if only I could never have faith like that.
Yeah.
My faith could never be that deep. Well, that's because it's your faith, your self-constructed, you're, again, going back to what we began this conversation with, you're measuring yourself with your calculating mind, saying, this is, I wish I was that person, when the Dharma, the whole teaching is for you. Again, it comes back. And Ziken Sensei, who is the father of Hisao Inagaki Sensei, said that what is the Dharma for? It's for me. It's for me just as I am. Who is the person who's born in the Pure Land? Not just this person who is known for being a devoted Shinshu follower. No, the person who's born in the Pure Land, the person who is the object of Amida salvation is just me as I am, not without any, I'm accepted and saved by Amida's power, just as I am. I don't have to put any, I don't have to measure myself. I don't have to calculate, So I just wanted to say that, I think you've mentioned that you look at people who have faith.
Yeah.
Supposedly.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not saying that everybody you think has faith doesn't. I mean, that would be, but there are, but you look at people who have faith and you say, wow, that person's faith is really deep. They go to the temple every month. They say the Nimbutsu all the time, and so on and so forth. But that's that person's experience. That experience, by the fact that it is that person's experience, it can't be yours. So it doesn't make sense to compare.
It's for you. The teaching.
Right.
It is. The teaching is for you.
Yeah.
The teaching is for you. It's not for somebody else. It's not
for other people. It's for you. It'd be like
it's similar to when you're here's a gift for you, and you're like, well, what about that one over there? Yeah, but here.
Yeah.
Here's your gift. Here, I'm giving this to you. Yeah, but look what he has. Yeah, but I'm giving you this, the same thing.
Yeah.
It's already being given. It's already there. It's already.
But but you know, I realize
Or like
even
a
when we
teacher, if
say
you had a
this,
teacher talking right to you, giving the Dharma
yeah,
to you, and I was looking up while he's teaching, looking over and going, yeah, but
yeah, yeah, yeah,
what's that teaching for him? But yeah, I'm giving
yeah.
you personal teaching. This teaching is for you.
It's
But what
direct, you know.
is
It's
teaching over there? Yeah. Anyway.
yeah, yeah, and but I realize even when we talk about this, of course, it's not the end of the question and the
No,
doubt, and the, you know.
definitely,
But
definitely not.
but hopefully, discussing these, you know, perspectives can give you kind of a new, you know, like even today, if there was anything that's helpful, that kind of, you know,
Yeah. Yeah. And this is my first time really discussing this stuff.
yeah,
I did discuss it to a certain extent, somewhat with Paul Roberts, but it was just
mm,
via correspondence, email. It was all email correspondence. I never was comfortable at that time with getting it. He often offered to do a
mm,
Skype call or a phone
yeah,
call
yeah,
or whatever, but I just wasn't comfortable at that time with that. And then I felt comfortable discussing certain things to an extent, in my time with Amida G and with
yeah,
Josho Sensei to an extent, and with some of my Dharma brothers, but never to this extent. I would very much abbreviate.
yeah. You kind of hold back because you're surrounded by, well, you know, when you get sometimes when you're in this like situation where everybody is kind of, you know, or seems to be like
Yeah,
super
on the same
religious,
page. Yeah,
you
and
kind
on
of
the same
like,
page. Yeah,
yeah, you kind of
fall in line. Yeah,
hold back a bit, you know, like I don't want to throw it all out there and get kicked
exactly.
out.
And that was kind of part of me going into that mode of, well, maybe it is just my monkey mind, maybe it is just, I interpreted things that were said, that
Mm,
and maybe it's just maybe, and I'll just ignore all this stuff. I'll just ignore
yeah.
it
Yeah, but the
and
problem with ignoring
suppress it,
your
and
doubt,
which is such the wrong thing to do, and it really ended badly. So, I mean, the great
yeah,
thing,
you
on one hand, it was great being part of such a community, because I mean, I told you how active I was in that,
right, yeah.
how many times I was having Dharma discussions a week, and it was great I've never been part of a Buddhist community like that ever in my
Mm,
life. Um, and I only to some degree felt any kind of part of the True Shin Buddhism email group. There's only
mm,
so much you can, and plus my comfortable level at the time and trust, I didn't
mm,
really go too much further with it.
yeah,
But it was, that part of it is great. That part of, people who are really enthusiastic about, the Dharma and about, you know, or,
yeah,
trying to stick to orthodox teachings, and do you know what I mean? You get, but at the same time, like I said, I kind of would agree. And that was my own. I didn't. That was just my own doing. I just thought, yeah, I just abbreviate my. I'll keep my questions and doubts like brief. I'll just sum them up in a sentence or two, and and I
yeah.
didn't plumb the depths of them. I didn't.
Well,
I
one,
I haven't ever really properly tried to clear the channels of faith, as it were. To an
yeah,
extent, like I said, with both the True Shin Buddhism era and Paul Roberts as my teacher, and the Amida G era and with Josho Sensei as my teacher, I still did to an extent asked a lot of my questions and did bring
mm,
up my doubts to an extent, but not like this, not ever, where I felt was a
yeah,
back and forth discussion, and I didn't just give up because either I felt like
yeah.
with Paul Roberts, it was like, well, I'm doing this by email, and it's like too hard to just try to type all this.
Stressful, right?
You couldn't, and I didn't, you know what I mean? So it wasn't his fault. He offered to do Skype calls. I just didn't,
Yeah,
I just never engaged with him with that. I never, didn't feel
Well, yeah,
doing
but
that.
he was
But now I
also
do. So that's changed. That's a big
right,
change,
right.
that I feel
Yeah,
comfortable now talking with somebody
speaking directly.
on a back and forth, in a back and forth way, in a way
Mm,
that I've never done. I've never done this before. I've never engaged in this kind of Dharma dialogue back and forth so in depth,
yeah,
sort of ruthlessly, and done this as part of my deep listening to this extent ever before.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I'm glad that it's a opportunity for you. I know I certainly do enjoy it. And with me, that like I'm not going to get offended if you ask the
No,
wrong
which is
question.
great. Oh, so good. It's so good. Like, because sometimes people would get offended or take it personally in both
Yeah.
the true Shin Buddhist group and
Yeah.
in the Amida G, people would almost take it personally, or like I was
Right.
questioning the faith. I'm like, no, the problem is not with the faith, it's with me. I'm sticking with me, but it's
Yeah.
I need to discuss these things, and so
Yeah.
anyway, it's just good to be able to, and that was there's more problem with me. I didn't take the chance to try to do it.
Well, I don't think you should be
So,
too hard on yourself personally,
yeah.
but I mean,
But anyway,
it
I
may
don't
have not
feel
been
that.
a good fit for you. I mean,
Yeah, true.
you're here now and you're
I'm human.
interested in learning more about, like you watched the video of the Nishi Honganji and
there's
you
only
thought
so
that
much
was
level of
interesting.
trust that I could have given at that time, I suppose, in those situations.
Yeah.
Given my own karmic limitations and all the things we've been talking about, there's only so much I could trust.
Right.
In the and Paul Robbins and the True Shin Buddhist group, and there's only so much I could trust and engage with the Amida G group and Jojo Sensei, and I did that to whatever extent I could, so I can put it that way.
Right.
I can
So
see it.
don't beat yourself up over it.
Yeah. But with you, I know there's almost, I always think I never have that thing where, ooh, if I say this, it's going to be a whole can of worms. I never feel that way. If I ask these questions, like, well, that first barrage of questions I asked you, like, they were like some serious,
all of which
Dharma,
we still haven't gotten to address yet.
Talking about, the Adi Buddha and Amida Buddha, being a manifestation. Like, if certain circles, you say that in, it's, you're just, yeah, exactly. So I did. I also felt more emboldened just to look. I got to finally deal with this. Otherwise, I'm going to keep doing the same thing, expecting different results. I'm going to keep trying to want Shin so badly without, and so I'm going to trick myself again. And so I'm not doing that again. I'm just not going to do that to myself again. I'm going to face it. So and it's you've made you and Kobai Sensei have made that possible. I feel like I can just, it doesn't matter what question I have, what doubt, what issue I have, I can bring it up and talk it through.
Yeah. Well, that's what Buddhism is supposed to be. I mean, there's no, you're supposed to think and, question and ask questions and get and the way the process works is that the further you go, you start to, build this understanding and connection with, the Dharma and teachers, and it becomes more, it becomes sort of part of your life, right? Or your thinking. So it's great. And I'm definitely glad that I have the opportunity to talk about Shin Buddhism with with somebody, because I don't often have that opportunity here in Japan. So.
No, I can imagine. Yeah, it's so I'm glad. And I'm really into it. So like we can really have some, like I love to talk about it. I mean, I need to talk about it because it's, but I actually do. I love talking about it. I love thinking about it,
Well, that right there for me is like a great indication that you have, this connection, right? You're attracted to this teaching. So you have some, I wouldn't worry about your past karma or lack thereof. There's, you're here. And
Yeah.
here and now is where we encounter the Dharma. There's no other time in which, we can hear this teaching. It's right here, right now. So yeah, I think we're probably, I guess we're out of time, but I will try to find some of the texts I mentioned, and then also, I know we had a bunch of other questions that we still haven't gotten to. So, send me, if something comes up, if you're really like, if there's an issue that you want to address, just send it to me in the messenger, and then we can. I do think, like I said last time, we should address your questions on like a priority of whatever the most, important thing is. So
there was something that I was thinking of during this time that's kind of connected to this. Now I can't remember it, but I'll try to, when I remember it, I'll send you a message.
Please do.
It's definitely a leg of this. It's definitely an arm of this. This
a part of the puzzle.
Yeah, definitely. So great. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Till next time, and we'll talk on Messenger.
All right.
Take care.
All right.
Namo Amida Butsu.
Take care. Namo Amida Butsu.
Bye now.
Bye, Scott. Take care.